Hey, how you going? This is just a bonus episode in which I get your feedback on some of the last few interviews I did on the Matt Fradd Show, get some of your criticism, which I will read, some of the things that you thought went well, what you'd like to see more of. I'm going to talk about what I'm learning through this whole process, talk about some of our upcoming guests. It's going to blow you away who's coming on. I'm really excited about it. And, just some exciting things going on. So I hope you enjoy this. If you're one of my patrons, please be sure to let me know on patreon.com/MattFradd. I'll throw up a post today. Cheers. First of all, thanks for listening, and thank you for being a part of this. I can't tell you how much fun I have doing these episodes, and I really hope that they are beneficial for the most part for people out there. I decided to do this about 9 or 10 months ago now, I guess, when my patrons sort of stepped up and agreed that they wanted to see something like the Matt Fradd Show happen, and it's really been a growing experience for me. I've learnt a lot. I think one of the virtues I have, I guess, is that if I get excited about an idea, I just go for it, and I do not let the great be the enemy of the good. But sometimes that's not the best thing, because it would have been good, perhaps, if I had planned a little bit more in advance. Anyway. But that's just to say I am learning a lot. But I've been getting some great feedback from my patrons, patreon.com/MattFradd, if you're interested. How was that for a soft sell? Who have written to me and have given me some feedback. So that's what I want to do. As I say, these are just coming out once a month. So we record the whole episode, put it on YouTube, and then I have my people take out 8 smaller clips and release them on Mondays and Fridays. Because obviously a 3-hour interview or a 2.5-hour interview or whatever is a long thing to watch. And so that's why we kind of take some of the gold out of those interviews and then release them after that. But if you're only consuming the Matt Fradd Show as a podcast, then you're only getting these once a month. So, all right, here's what I want to do. I want to begin with an awesome email I got over Patreon. I'm not going to say the man's name because I don't want to. I don't want to embarrass him or whatever. But he gave me some great feedback. He said this, I'm going to quote. He says, "I had an observation upon listening to your Father Gregory Pine interview and then your Annie Hickman interview back to back, and had some feedback for you if you find it helpful. The former," that's with Gregory Pine, Father Gregory Pine, he says, "was one of the best you have done, and the latter," Annie Hickman, "was unfortunately quite the opposite, and not because of the subject matter." Not, because it didn't scandalize him, he's saying, or anything like that. He says, "I hope this comes off as from someone that cares about your work and truly wishes the best for you." Okay, so he begins with Father Gregory Pine. He says, "You and Father Pine had an energy and focus to the conversation where it was incredibly engaging and every minute seemed well used. The Patreon questions were also incredibly well integrated. He was an amazing guest, so knowledgeable and deep, but also very well organized and incredibly well spoken. That is very important, and I think sometimes long-form interviews risk undervaluing that aspect and its relevance to the time people invest in listening." I'm just going to cut these kind of short because I don't want to read the whole thing to you and bore you. But he says, in regards to Annie Hickman, he says that interview was the polar opposite of that. This is his opinion. I'm sure some of you enjoyed the Hickman interview, but let me just say what he said first. He says, "I thought the two of you were meandering and goofing off for so much of the interview that it was a bit dead for a lot of it. Other than discussing Annie's house dinners, it only came to life when he was posing a liberal point of view on something, only to be expertly opposed and thus rhetorically demolished by what you had to say, which I happen to agree with every time. He's obviously a holier man than I in what he is doing for the kingdom, and I'm open to listening to people with his point of view. I in no way mean to criticize his intellect or motives." By the way, can we just pause and say what an amazing email this is? I think sometimes when we criticize people, we just kind of go right for the jugular, and this guy is just doing an expert job in being charitable and being nuanced, but also being frank. He says, "He, that is Annie, did not sound prepared to defend his opinions on anything. I thought he defaulted to emotional ambiguity," and he goes on. Anyway, here's how he sums it up. "Anyway, take it for what it's worth. I hope you are well, and I remain grateful for what you do and in awe of your faith and insights. I believe I'm just a bit younger than you and have slightly fewer children, but you are someone that I really look up to," which is just super nice. So thank you very much for that email. So let me just say a bit about the Pine interview and the Hickman interview. So yeah, like let me just say this. I think there's a benefit to long-term, long-form discussions, and then there's like a downside. I think the benefit to long-form discussions, like we're having, and like I set out to do immediately with the Matt Fradd Show, is that they give people the opportunity to think through their positions, right, in real time, and it gives them the opportunity to explain them in more than a soundbite. You know, like in a Twitter online world in which we live, people throw out these one-liners and then you often wonder what they mean by them, or you don't kind of get much follow-up, or you'd like them to be a little more nuanced, but the internet doesn't often lend itself to nuance, right? As one of my previous guests said on Pints with Aquinas, humility rarely or never perhaps goes viral, you know? So people are kind of very bombastic on social media and things like this. That's what's great about long form discussions. That's why I love having them, is because I can get your opinion on something, push back a little. Like, well, what do you say to someone who says this? You know, I just have that skeptical mind, I guess, so that even when people on my side, if you want, are making a claim, I tend to take the devil's advocate position, which might be super frustrating. And maybe I shouldn't do that so much. I don't know. That's just kind of how I'm wired, maybe. Maybe some of you wish that I wasn't wired like that. I don't know. But that's why I love long form discussions. You know, I think here's the other reason why I hope that the Matt Fradd Show is a benefit to people. I just feel like we live in a chaotic time, you know, like in our society, in the church. It all feels pretty chaotic, doesn't it? And so I think we're all trying to make sense of things. So like even if you're a self-declared Catholic or an evangelical or some other religion or an atheist or a skeptic, we're all trying to make sense of this world. And I think some people are trying to do it through the social justice warrior lingo. Some people are doing it through Michael Voris, if they're a Catholic, or through Bishop Barron, or through maybe my shows. Some people are trying to do it by, through the kind of Ben Shapiro or, Trump or anti-Trump. I'm not taking a position one way or another on any of these things. I'm just saying, like, I feel like we're kind of latching on to different people and platforms to try, again, to make sense of this world. It reminds me of when I went to get my eyes checked recently, and they put the little thing in front of my eyes. What do you call it? That thing where they click it through until the writing looks clear. And I just feel like that's what we're doing. Like, click feminism. Let me try and make sense of the world through this kind of lens, or how the culture understands feminism. Or click Black Lives Matter, or whatever. Like click whatever, like pro-life. And that's why I feel like these discussions have been so well received, not necessarily in the sense that people like them, but that a lot of people watch them. And Joe Rogan's obviously the king at this. He has a quadrillion people who subscribe to him. I'm not necessarily advocating or promoting him at all, but some of the things he says are very interesting, and some of the guests again, the whole point is just that people want conversation because they're trying to figure this crazy world out. So anyway, that's what I think the benefit of these long-form discussions are. Now, I think on the flip side, like how they can, the tendency for them to go bad is there because they can be meandering, right? They can be low on content. And I agree with this criticism of my interview with Annie Hickman. Like, Annie is a tremendous friend of mine. I love him so much and always learn from him. He's the kind of guy where I kind of feel like he could talk me into anything because he is so passionate and so sincere and just walks with our Lord. He's a good man, even if we disagree on things, right? But So I think maybe I wasn't as well prepared for that interview as I should have been. I was just like, hey, let's just chat because I love you. Let's just chat, And maybe there's some people out there who just really like that. They like the meandering, tangents. But I agree with this criticism. I think it was too meandering. And here's one thing I'm learning right now. Okay, so like in the beginning, I was like, okay, let's just do long form discussions, right? Let's see how long we can chat for, as if that was going to be the test for whether it was good or not, That is actually kind of how I thought it. Now, if you had have asked me that at the time, I would have been like, no, that's not what I think. But I think I did think that. Yeah. So this last one with Annie Hickman was 3 hours and 7 minutes. And I think there were things that we touched upon that were great, but yeah, I think there was a lot of meandering. So one thing I'm learning, okay, is, it's so great. Like I learned so much. Like that Christopher West interview. Let's just let's go off on a tangent here with the Christopher West interview, and then we'll go back to what I'm learning with in general. When Christopher came on to the show, I was really afraid that he was going to give a 3-hour monologue, all right? Because Christopher has been thinking about the theology of the body, writing about the theology of the body, speaking about the theology of the body, right, for probably longer than I've been a Christian, like nearly 20 years or something. So he has a lot to say. And I have seen him on podcasts, like he was on Catching Fox's podcast, and I kind of felt when I listened to that maybe he wasn't going to understand the point of the chat, right? That this was going to be less of a, I ask you a question, you speak, I ask you a question, you speak, but more of a dialectic approach, right? Dialogical. And I was so afraid of that I kept interrupting him incessantly. And that's totally on me. That's my bad. And I've learned from that, I hope. I can't watch that show anymore. And when people ask me about my interview with Christopher West, or they tell me they've watched it, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I cringe because I did a poor job in that interview, I felt. Christopher was marvelous, awesome, and he had a lot of great things to say. I was super annoying. And so I'm like in that I kept interrupting him. Now, I think some interruption is good, obviously. If someone does kind of start ranting for too long, I think to bring life to the interview, you kind of have to interject and kind of guide it a little. And that's something I'm learning. All right, so that's what I kind of learned with Christopher. But another thing I'm now learning is, okay, Matt, that's me, I'm talking to me. This is the point of a long form discussion is not the long form. The point is the discussion, right? And so I think what I'm learning is I need to have some sort of plan and direction, and not to be afraid to get off on a tangent, because that's why it is a long form discussion, but it has to have some serious aim or goal, right? So I just want to thank the person who wrote that and gave me that feedback, because that really helped. So in about a week now, or thereabouts, I'm going to be interviewing Stephanie Gray, who writes a lot and speaks a lot and debates a lot on college campuses regarding abortion. All right, so that's what I'm going into this interview with, right? Like, okay, here's that's what we're going to talk about. So for those of you who are my patrons, I'm going to throw up a post, and you can tell me the sorts of questions you want me to ask, and I'm going to draw from that during the interview. But I think that'll be a lot more of a focused discussion. So I hope that, if this is a kind of opinion held by many people that they really preferred the Pine interview, maybe that is because it was more kind of, just directed. The other reason, of course, people like Father Gregory Pine is the dude is brilliant, right? He speaks like I can't write. In other words, like if you gave me 3 days to formulate a paragraph on something, I couldn't write it over the course of 3 days like he can spit it out, having just been asked the question. I mean, he's a brilliant guy. And so that was a terrific interview, and I'm super pumped about it. All right, so that's all I wanted to say. Here, just a few things. Here's some upcoming guests, which I'm really excited about. Peter Kraft, Dr. Peter Kraft, philosopher from Boston College, has agreed to be on the show. It looks like that's locked in. Father Mike Schmitz is coming on, if some of you are familiar with his YouTube videos. Anthony Eslin, who just wrote that excellent book, Out of the Ashes, looks like he's going to be coming on. I have some other people that I plan on reaching out to as well. I don't want to kind of say their name just yet, but really excited about this. As I say, on the Matt Fradd Show on YouTube, right now I'm releasing one big episode a month, and then I'm having people cut it up into 8 particular episodes and releasing them, So I don't know, man. We all want to tell ourselves that we're doing the will of God, We all want to do that. But that doesn't mean we are. That's my point. That doesn't mean that we are. And so I just want to give this to the Father and say, Father, if this is a good thing, right? Not just a good thing, because lots of things can be good and still not be the Father's, will. We all have to discern which goods we want to be spending our time doing. Just because it's good to be a firefighter or good to be a philosophy professor, it doesn't mean we can do both. That's my point. So I just want to give this to the Father, and if it's His will that this continue and grow, that it does. But I want to also pray that if this is not the Father's will, that it fall apart, and that it not continue. So just let me get a little practical right now, just kind of so you know where I'm coming from. I am currently discerning whether or not we should do 2 episodes a month instead of 1. Now, some of you out there will be thinking, there's no way I can consume two a month. Well, maybe you can't, but it's for more than just you. There's a lot of people out there I'm trying to reach. So here's the cost of that. And yes, I'm about to ask you to give to me on Patreon. So just be forewarned. The show itself, right? I pay $1,500 for the guy to edit it all. For the space, for those 3 very expensive cameras. That's $1,500. Now the guests, I usually pay $1,500, and I fly them out for that. And give them that stipend, because this is their time. They're going over from their families. They have to fly them here to Atlanta. It's not like they can just throw on Skype and we do the interview. All right, so and that's like at the low end. Like there's some of my guests that are requiring for them to come. I need to pay them more than that. Like, so I won't say who, but an upcoming guest, I'm going to have to pay about $2,500 just for this person's time. Okay, so you think about it as like $1,500, right? Plus $2,500, that's like $4,000. But that's maybe the exception. So let's just stick to that's like $3,000 for interview. But then I give it to someone who does all the edits and creates all the thumbnails and releases them. And the reason I'm paying people to do all this stuff is because I want the time to be able to do what I'm good at. And one of the things I'm not good at is creating thumbnails and editing videos. And it's just it's not a great use of my time. So one episode, that's about $3,500, right? Think about that. That's a lot of money, Now, if I do more episodes at this studio, I'll get a bit of a break. So if I do 2 a month instead of $1,500, it'll be $1,300. Not much of a break. I get it, but anyway, the point is just this. If you want me to do more of these shows, start supporting me on Patreon. Right. Like I do make money through advertising people, but it's not enough to cover my costs. Like if you want to see more episodes, then support me on Patreon. Like that's it, man. Or support me directly by going to pintswithaquinas.com/donate. If 100 people give $10 a month, that's a huge help, that kind of stuff. If you don't, then that's okay too. Like if you want to stop supporting me, then you can stop supporting me. And that's kind of how I'm going to gauge whether or not I should continue doing these. Right. I really do want this to be a blessing to people. I don't like the fact that the only option people have for long-form discussions are people like Joe Rogan and a couple of others. Even though Joe has some great thoughts, he definitely seems to be anti-Catholic. Whenever he talks about the church, he speaks about it in a way that I think is really unfair. And he also swears like a sailor. Now, I swear like a sailor too, to be quite frank with you, but hopefully not on air. And if I do, you can correct me on that, eh? But he's also blaspheming and things like that. And I just think, gosh, there's these teenagers and college students out there, and wouldn't you love them to be exposed to the thought of Peter Kraft and Father Gregory Pine and all these other people? Like, I want people, I'm thinking especially of college students right now, who in these years where they're being kind of attacked, criticized by people who hate the church and hate what the church is and teaches. I want them to be equipped. And so I just wanted to throw my hat in the ring. And so if this is something that you enjoy and you want to know how to support me, that's what you can do. Like even if it's, can you hear my kids? That's them. I have 4 kids screaming. They have 3 friends over. No, and it doesn't matter. Why am I telling you this? This is a part I should edit, but I won't. Okay, so yeah, if you want to support me, $5 a month, something like that would be huge. Like, please do that. Please do that. I give you gifts in return. You'll see all the gifts that are there. But as I say, if you don't want to, don't do it. Like, thank you just for listening and pray. Would you pray? It's so easy to ask someone to pray, and I know sometimes people ask me to pray, and I'm like, yeah, totally, and I don't. But I believe in the power of prayer, and I believe that if God wants to anoint something, He will. And but that our prayers can be very effective. I don't necessarily want to reach 100,000 people. I want to reach whoever the Father wants me to reach, and I pray that whoever is reached will be inspired and will be challenged to grow in their understanding of the Catholic faith and to love Jesus Christ and to follow Him more wholeheartedly. So anyway, there are a few thoughts on the Matt Fradd Show and what's been happening, and I hope it's been a help. Maybe this is something I'll do. from time to time. Maybe I'll do it. You know what? I'm just going to do it. There you go. I've just made a decision. This is my show. Boom. Just did it. After this Stephanie Gray interview, once it releases, once I get your feedback, I'll come on and I'll just do a little kind of summary and summation, and I'll read the things that you patrons have been posting about the show and just tell you what I think about it. So I hope that's a help. I just want to thank you so much for everyone who writes to me and criticizes me. I really take your criticisms to heart. And this criticism was just super great because it was a really good balance, as I said earlier, of charity, but, being frank at the same time. It's not like I expect people to be like, I'm so sorry, I love you. It's just that, I want people to be direct. Like, you did not do a good job here. You should, I really do appreciate that, but I'm just like you. I respond much better if you're charitable in how you do it. So thank you so much to the people who did that. Really appreciate it. So thank you. And, subscribe to the Matt Fradd Show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe. That way, as these come out, you'll be able to see them when they come out, as opposed to you not subscribing and then missing stuff. God bless you. Thank you so much. Bye.